Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Tiffany with Voices for Independence, Fitness and Activities, and I am sharing yet another recipe with you this morning. We are continuing our series on cooking across America, and today we are making a stop in New Mexico. Now this one is going to be a two-part installment just because the steps that are involved and part of the recipe needs to go in the refrigerator for a while. So I will go over the first part and then I'll be back later today to finish it off. But so you know what we're doing today, being in New Mexico, we are going to be making some Biscochitos. Okay, Biscochitos are a very infamous cookie that is well known across all of New Mexico. It has a lot of Portugal and Spain heritage involved in it. It's when the first immigrants came over and settled in New Mexico. A lot of people think it might have been, the cookie may have stemmed from the Mexican wedding cake cookie, but it really has more of a European influence. And it has developed and changed a little bit over time, but again, it was from the first Spanish colonists that settled in New Mexico. And what it basically is a buttery cookie that is spiced with some cinnamon and anise flavoring. Now, anise is one of those flavors, either you love it or you hate it. And if you're not sure what it is, it's very similar to that black licorice, as we know, that flavor. So it's a cookie, and it was mostly served at the holidays, but over the centuries, it's been served at all important events in the family. So it was at weddings and baptisms, and not only just the holidays. So I'm going to share that recipe with you now. So for the Biscochitos, and it comes from the Spanish word for little cakes or baby cakes. So that's where the name comes from. And again, it has more of the Spanish and Portugal influence than Mexican. But being in New Mexico, they had a lot of early colonists from Spain. So what you're going to need for this, you'll need a half a cup of butter, or lard was traditionally used. I'm using butter today, and a half a cup of shortening, where again, I'm using butter. You can use whatever ingredients you like for that, whatever fat you like to use, whether it's lard, shortening, or butter. I am using a whole cup of butter then, so it's a cup of whatever oil like that you want to use. And what we're going to do is we're going to blend this and cream it till it's a little bit soft, and then we're going to add some of our other ingredients. I will be using the hand mixer today. You'll need it for a part of it being a cookie recipe. So if the loud noises bother you, make sure you turn down your sound at this time, as I'm going to cream the butter first, and it's set out at room temperature, and I softened it. I kind of hurried up the process this morning. I put it in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds. All right, so if your butter is already at room temperature, it'll only take a second to cream it into a smoother consistency and take it all out of its solid form. To this, we're going to be adding 3/4 cup of sugar. So I'm going to put that in. We're going to add some vanilla at this time as well. And we are going to be adding a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And then also, we're going to be adding our anise seed at this time, which is going to be the 1.5 teaspoons. Now you can find this right in your spice aisle at the local grocery store. And again, it is a stronger flavor. Sometimes you'll see it used in pizzelles here as well. And like I said, it's very similar to that black licorice flavor that we're more familiar with. So at this time, we're going to blend these together, and we're also going to add 1 egg. This recipe only takes 1 egg. This is going to be a rolled cookie. So once we get our dough put together, we are going to cover it and place it in the refrigerator for a couple hours, up to a day if you would like. So I'm going to blend these, pardon me, ingredients together. Like to make sure I take my butter out in time or help along the softening process when I'm baking. Make sure you don't get it too soft though, because your cookies will spread more and be probably a little bit flatter and crispier. So you don't want it melted, you want it softened to room temperature or a little more. All right, so to this, what we're going to add now is we are going to be adding our dry ingredients. And when you bake cookies, if you've ever baked them before, you'll know this, or if you haven't, they take a lot of flour because we're making virtually a dough. So this is going to take 3 cups of flour, and I'm going to be adding 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder to this. So I'm going to actually add it to the flour and then sift it through a little bit using a fork to try and just distribute that baking powder a little bit. They always tell you to mix your dry ingredients separately in another bowl. This is why it also helps prevent clumping up in areas. But again, lots of times when I'm baking, I kind of skip that step, so I've never really noticed a negative effect, but you just want to make sure you incorporate everything really well. Either way you do it in a separate bowl or not. All right, so now we're also going to start adding this to our dry ingredients, not dry ingredients, but what we've started, we're adding our dry to our wet ingredients. So I'm gonna put a little in at a time, probably half, and then we're gonna blend it again on a low setting, and this is gonna kind of crumble. We don't wanna over blend this, we kind of just wanna incorporate the dry ingredients. So if you see it to start to crumble up a little bit, that's okay. That's what we're looking for. You want to scrape the sides as you go to get that dry ingredients down so it can get mixed in. All right, so that's almost incorporated. I'm going to add the other half of the dry ingredients. And then we're gonna mix it up, and then traditionally you would add a little bit of brandy to this recipe, actually, up close to 1/4 of a cup, maybe a little bit more, 1/4 to 1/2 a cup. But if you don't have brandy in the house, or you don't wanna add that, even though it's alcohol, it will cook off, it's safe to eat. For children and everything, it cooks off in the oven. I don't have brandy in the house, so they say a substitute is apple juice. So that's what I'm using today for my Biscochitos. All right, so I'm just kind of mixing the dry ingredients a little bit so it doesn't fly all over the kitchen. I can tell you from experience, I would recommend that. And I kind of tamp it down with the mixer before I turn it on. It's going to start to crumble up at this time, and you can kind of see that happening. The dough's not fully coming together, but that's what we're looking for. All right, so I'm going to hand mix it a little bit, and then we're going to add our apple juice, or if you're using brandy, you'll be adding that in at this time. And again, you want to add a 1/2 cup to a 1/4 cup up to 1/2. We're just looking for it to kind of pull our dough together a little bit. So I'm going to get my apple juice, which is my substitute for the brandy. We're going to start with about 1/4 of a cup, and then you can add a little bit as needed. You want this similar to a sugar cookie dough if you're familiar with that. That is the consistency you're looking for. And remember, you might have to turn your setting up a little more. Our dough's getting stiffer and thicker, so you will need to have a higher power, but don't overdo it. If you feel like your handheld mixer can't take the resistance that the dough is giving, just stop. You don't want to burn your hand mixer out, and then just mix it by hand. So it looks like it's coming together nicely. You want it to be a little bit sticky, but not too wet. So this looks great right here. So at this point, what we're gonna do for our Biscochitos, it's actually the cookie of New Mexico, the state cookie. We are going to put the dough in the refrigerator for a few hours. So I'll be back later today to share part 2 of this recipe with you. We'll be rolling it out, showing you how to cut it, And then I'll have some already pre-cut and baked to show you the finishing touches, because we're going to have to add something special before they cool. So I hope you come back and join me for part 2 as we're cooking across America. We're in New Mexico today making their infamous Biscochitos, which is their state cookie. So join me soon. I'll be back.